What's going on? It's time for another episode of Too Hard for the Radio, transmitting from the future free state of Greater Idaho. I am the one armed madman, and with me today we've got Richard Spiegel. Richard, pleasure to have you. Pleasure to meet you. How we doing?
Pretty good. Thanks for having me.
No problem, man. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, then we'll kind of dig into your book here.
I spent most of my adult life in the military. Um, I started active duty with the 82nd Airborne Division back when I was a lot younger. I had a bit of a break in service, and then I joined the 109th Infantry National Guard unit out of Pennsylvania. I've been writing for a pretty long time. I just started publishing recently in the last couple of years, though.
Right on.
I just retired last February from the
Is that
military.
is that something where you had like a lot of downtime in the military that you had to fill with something?
That's actually exactly what happened. When we did our last deployment to Egypt, I knew, wow, I mean, probably gonna have a lot of free time and I'm away from the family, so maybe I should start working on this again. And then once I let the genie out of the bottle, I have been able to put it back in.
Yeah.
So
I
basically just been a nightmare of writing ever since.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Like I've been working on a book for a long time and it takes me a long time to type because I'm doing it all on my iPad with one finger essentially.
Okay.
But it's kind of a cathartic experience if once it starts coming out of you, things just start flowing. It's an interesting thing. Were you able to use like some of your excuse me, some of your military background in your writing?
Yeah, for the when it gets like to the action and combat scenes and stuff like that, I'm able to use my military experience to keep it as realistic as possible. When you're dealing with like different weapon systems and stuff like that too. Depending on my Eternal Night series, which so far is based on like modern day, I was able to use that. The Wolves and Ravens is fantasy, so not quite as much, but I'm still able to draw on the experience a bit.
Cool. What made you go into fantasy?
Um, Well, I like fantasy, and honestly, so I have 2 books for Eternal Nights, and they're the prequels. The real Eternal Night series is gonna be science fiction,
Okay.
and that takes a long time to research. So, kinda to fill the gap, I started writing Wolves and Ravens. I ended up having a whole lot of fun with it, so I basically did almost all 3 of those books in about a year and a half. So that way I was able to put those out while I was still doing research for the science fiction.
Yeah, I totally relate to the research on the science fiction. Like I didn't really realize how much like research it takes a lot of times to like figure out some sort of technology, how something would work, like if you're doing space opera type stuff like astrophysics and,
Yeah.
quantum mechanics and all this kind of crap and like once I started getting into it, it was like, holy crap, like this is a lot of research. And sometimes you'll do research for hours and it'll end up being like a paragraph. You know
No,
what I mean?
exactly. Exactly, because just because it's fiction doesn't mean it shouldn't sound realistic, and for what we have science-wise now can be added to it, and exactly like you said, like I'm researching for, like, half an hour just to know what to call something because
Yeah.
I know it has a scientific name, and I have to figure it out, so you're on Google for 30 minutes trying to figure out one sentence.
Yeah, I remember, like, after I started, I, like, revisited some of Alistair Reynolds' novels and, like, read Revelation Space again, and I was just blown away by, like, how much research it must have taken to write that book and, like, how much the guy knows about everything, like
Yeah.
and for me, like, I know some people don't like the technical aspects of science fiction, but for me, like, I enjoy that part. Like, I wanna know how something works. Like, if you create a spaceship that can travel faster than light, or if you make a wormhole, like, I wanna know how that works. Like, I wanna see, did you put some thought into this, or did you just kind of hand wave it away? Like, I'm reading a book right now where, these, craft, they're like kind of like a living space whale type of craft, and they generate wormholes. And the guy just kinda hand waved it away and didn't really explain how it works or, any of that type of thing. And, it's alright, I guess, because, it's a good book. It's not great, but I like to know how that type of stuff works. I wanna know that you put some he had a really cool idea in one of the earlier books in the series where he had a fusion knife that kind of, like, fires up and can cut through all kinds of stuff, but he didn't explain how it works, and I'm like, "Come on, dude, that's such a cool idea, like, tell me how this thing works."
You can get away with hand waving if you're just gonna write maybe a book or 2, and
Yeah,
you're just kind of focusing on that. But if you're writing like a massive series, because it's gonna be dozens of books,
yeah,
you gotta get the science right because you're gonna be consistently, like, referring to it, and people are gonna figure out, "This guy's just making this crap up. He didn't put any effort into it at
yeah,
all."
but
And yeah.
yeah, if you're gonna make it up though, like, you gotta do it in the right way. So, like, one
Yeah,
of my favorite series, is the Expeditionary Space series by,
okay.
and, like, it involves, like, it's, like, kind of military science fiction, which I'm not super into, like, I'm not into, like, the war stuff as much, but this one I really like, and, it has, like the main character's kind of like a soldier, essentially, and he's kind of a grunt that finds himself in positions that get him elevated into being like one of the head general types within this, series. And he has like his best friend is an AI that was created by an ancient alien race that is so far advanced that, we can't really understand the stuff that he does. So he'll kind of bring something into it and he'll explain it a little bit and then he'll go, "You're not understand." The AI will be like, "You don't want to know the details to this, right?" And he's like, "No, just get to the point," and he kinda does it in a funny way, and it's, kind of a bummer because I like I said, I like knowing how that stuff goes, but I think he does a good job of, like, hand waving where it's not just, like, completely thrown off the side. It's like, "Hey, man, you're not gonna understand this. You don't have the frame of mind. You don't have the scientific ability to, like, understand how I'm doing this, so I'm just gonna get to the point," type of thing, which I think is interesting.
Cool.
So, what else, what type of science fiction are you diving into? Is this like space opera? Are you going cyberpunk, military?
I guess it would be closer to a space opera.
Yeah.
It's because the Eternal Night series focuses around a family of vampires, and then after the first 2 books, Redemption and Origins, they I mean, without spoiling anything,
Yeah, yeah,
by
don't
the
spoil
end
anything.
but by the end of Origins, they find out exactly what they are and what might be coming. And it's a husband and wife team of vampires, and they basically agree, like, we're gonna do what we can, we're gonna stop this. But they don't know if it's true, and they don't know when it's gonna happen. So then the main Eternal Night series is actually 1,300 years further into the future.
Oh, cool.
So the primary focus is on the characters and the kind of stuff that they're doing. In some ways, the science is almost kind of just in the background. I do my best to get it right and stuff like that, but it's more along. It's more focused on like the interpersonal, like what they are and what it is they're trying to do, um, and just like how they change. Because by the time that series starts, now they're over 2,000 years old, so they're completely different people than how they were in like the first 2 books that are already in print.
Oh, very cool. So, like, I read this book a while back. God, I'm drawing a blank on the name of it, but it was really good. It was written by an evolutionary biologist, essentially, and
Okay.
it's kind of it's a sci-fi, but he brings in like zombies and vampires into the book, and everything has like a basis, like a scientific biological basis to it of like why this being exists and like how it's created essentially. And he had one of the coolest explanations for vampires that I've ever seen where he kind of related it to like if you go to the African Serengeti, like there's tons of prey animals per every predator. So like, for every pack of lions, you've got 1,000 gazelle or something like that. So then he imagined like, well, what if humans are actually a prey animal instead of the predator? And what would the predator be? It would be a vampire essentially. And he kind of had them to where they would hibernate for a while and then they would come back when our numbers would get bigger and then they'd kind of cull us down a little bit and then go back into hibernation. And the way that we kind of got rid of them was a total accident, essentially. Like one time while they were hibernating, we kind of started to develop technology and start to build things. And they had like an affinity for right angles. So, like, anytime we would build something with a right angle, it would put them into an epileptic seizure, essentially, and they couldn't operate anymore. So when you hold the cross out at them, they thought it was like, the Lord rebuking these demons, but essentially it was just their mind not being able to contemplate a right angle, which I thought was interesting.
That was actually one of the hardest parts because I focus on realism for my characters. And a lot of times vampires are hand waved, like as to what they are and stuff like that. And I deal with the religious aspect of it in the first book, because a lot of times it's just hand waved, like, oh, they're demons, and that explains everything. And like I said, I handle that in the first book, and they realize that's not what they are. But now the problem is, if you're an intelligent person and you thought you were a demon for 900 years, and then you find out you're not a demon, the first question you're going to ask is, well, then what am I? So my main characters wouldn't be real if they didn't start asking those questions.
Yeah.
So they start examining themselves, and I have to come up with scientific reasons for like an immortal blood sucking monster,
Yeah.
and you hardly ever see that. I've seen it in some TV shows where they'll play it off as a virus. I never liked that, but I'll give them props for at least trying to come up
Yeah.
with a reason. So, like throughout the series, they're discovering things like how their bodies actually work, and I try to put some kind of science behind it to make it make sense in that respect. That was well, is that nobody does that. Nobody tries to explain exactly how the body of a vampire works, and I have to figure all this out and make it
Yeah.
at least sound realistic.
Yeah. Has ChatGPT helped you out with your research, kind of like boiling things down? For me, like, I don't use it to write in any way, but I do kind of use it for research because it makes it so much easier than like digging into scientific articles or, not articles, but like papers and stuff like that. Like, you can do that, but for me, like, I've found that it's a lot easier to just kind of like ask ChatGPT to give me some suggestions on like how this could work. Like, hey, look, these are, so like I'm kind of trying to figure out UFOs right now. Like, so how would these UFOs sightings, if these are real, how would these craft work? And then it would be like, okay, here's the technology that these people have. So how would they use that to create this craft? And then it'll kind of give you some ideas and you can piece some things together and not really like it doesn't really figure it out because, nobody knows how these things would actually work, but it can kind of give you some direction to go in.
Well, most of that research I actually did a couple of years ago, and I talked to a lot of doctors
Oh, okay.
for one, because like I said, like for my writing, it's all about realism. So everything is brutally detailed, and like just for example, if somebody's getting eviscerated, I'm gonna describe it, and I need to know where the organs are, so I know which organ would fall out
Oh,
first.
yeah, for sure.
That's the level of realism I go with, and as far as what they are, um, they find out in small snippets, and they're consistently wrong, and realizing the truth and stuff like that, and I stretch it out through several books, none of those have been published yet, they're waiting in line, um, but I've never used um, what did you say?
ChatGPT, it's like an AI
ChatGPT. I'm
chatbot.
old. I don't even really know what that is. I
Yeah.
hear it referenced.
It's like they call it a large language model. So essentially it kind of give it a try. I would think it could actually help you out quite a bit. Like for me, it's made research a whole lot easier because it kind of does the research for you in a lot of ways, and it can give you diagrams and it can even link you to the stuff that it's looking at. But no, it's kind of been a godsend in a lot of ways for research because it's limited the time that I have to spend like sifting through things. It kind of like shortens it up for you. So yeah, I'd give it a try. And or even like, the one on X, Grok AI, that one works really well too. I was
I know,
thinking,
like in these last couple of years, when you Google stuff, the AI answers come up a lot, quicker than they used to. That's kind of helpful, but then you have to spend like 10 minutes fact checking it. because I can't take it as it is. I got to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah, like I said, it's not like it's not you can't let it do the God, my dog is going crazy right now. Shut up. You know, it's not capable of, like, doing all the research for you, but it's really capable of, like, narrowing down the pool of things that you have to go through. One of the things I was thinking about, like, while you were talking about the vampires is, like, how frustrating it must be for something like that to just be, like, in existence and not know, like, what you are or why you're different. You're essentially like living amongst humans and you're kind of like an anomaly in a lot of ways. And it's like, what the hell is going on here? And that must be an interesting topic to explore as a writer.
Well, they were born in the 11th century. So, very superstitious, very religious time. And then as they grow, they're extremely intelligent people, but they lived for centuries in this superstitious time where they just know for a fact that they're demons because that's what vampires are.
Yeah.
They realize they're wrong. And then it just becomes like this mind blowing, well, then what the hell are we kind of thing. And then Origins, they do find answers to all the big questions, at least. Like, I don't, the only cliffhanger I leave is what's coming for the future, but I at least give people answers on what they are, you know. I don't leave
Yeah.
them hanging on that. And then comes well, then how do our bodies work? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? And if they're rich and have all these resources, there's no reason why they couldn't be doing experiments on themselves. So then I've got to figure out how these would make sense and what's the
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah. No shit, right? How did you get interested in vampires?
I've always been interested in vampires. I would say I read everything that Anne Rice wrote, but then everything that came after her was just kind of garbage. Like, I don't want to say anything negative about anything in particular, but suffice it to say that vampire entertainment just went downhill. It's for kids. It's not good anymore.
Twilight really screwed everything for vampires, right? They kinda made it this weird thing that, like
Wasn't gonna say that, but that's exactly what I was thinking.
yeah,
My girlfriend at the time and I,
because 'cause they're not
all
cool anymore after Twilight, they're kinda pussies now.
all we knew is that this Twilight thing had to do with vampires. So we went to the movies to check it out. And our first hint should have been because we went to a 10 o'clock showing. There were 5 people in the audience, and it was like opening week. That should have been the first hint because it's geared towards 12 to 14-year-old girls. It was
Yeah,
past their bedtime.
yeah.
And then I've never walked out on a movie before, but I walked out on that. And then I read the books. And for the first time in my life, the books are worse than the movies.
Oh, really? Oh, that's awful.
They so much money that everything that came out after that was geared towards kids. I mean, Anne Rice's books are a long time ago, and that's like the only thing I can think of as being like great vampire entertainment. And I just wanted to write something for adults because grown-ups need entertainment too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I remember there was a show, I can't remember what it was called, but, it took place in the South. True Blood. True Blood was okay. I watched that show. It wasn't great, but it was worth watching, I think. I don't know, it's been so many years since I've watched it. I'd probably have all kinds of problems with it now because I watched it when I was a lot younger and I was kind
That
of
was a long
I
time ago.
I wasn't I didn't really start, like, reading books until I got hurt. Like, after I got electrocuted working on power lines, and I was kinda laid up for a long time, and
But
I was watching I was into TV and stuff back then, and I kind of, like, ran out of stuff to watch on TV for after a couple years, like, on the couch, and, like, I've always been interested in sci-fi, and that's kind of always been my go-to to, like, watch is, like, sci-fi type of stuff, and, I ended up, like, getting into podcasts and then finally, like, got into audiobooks at one point, and, like, as soon as I got into audiobooks, I was like, "Oh, wow, TV sucks." Like, this stuff sucks. These movies suck, these shows suck, like, they're just not good, compared to these books that I'm reading, and, like, a lot of these books are just incredible, and, some of these guys that I like Alistair Reynolds, who I brought up earlier, he's got a very expensive imagination. So it's really hard to like turn something like that into a TV project, which is, one of the cool things about like AI is that like hopefully within the near future, someone like you will be able to take your books and put them into an AI program and say, "Hey, look, create me like a 6 episode web series with, 15 minutes per episode." And you can kind of boil them down. And then, if you're putting out your book, you've got an at the end of the book, you've got a link to a YouTube channel where you can go and kind of visualize like how does he picture the because like I always picture characters in my own way, you know what I mean? Like I have an idea of like how I think this person looks and how I think they would act or how this technology would look. And, and a lot of times it's hard to kind of really tell with someone just describing it in the written word, but it would be cool to kind of like, especially for a writer, to be able to see their project come to life.
Well, I do, because like I said, I try to focus on realism, and when it comes to being descriptive, I try to not. I'm descriptive where it matters, where like you have to see this a certain way or it's not going to make sense.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I actually don't put in a lot of details because I want the person's imagination. Like, I want this to be when you have real characters, the immersion is total, and then the person's imagination does the rest.
Yeah, that's one of my favorite things about audiobooks is like the theater of the mind. For me, it's a little bit harder to kind of immerse myself in that world when I'm like reading the physical book. But when you're listening to it, you can kind of leave it. Like I go out and sit in my hot tub for a couple hours every night. And I like to put on an audiobook and just kind of like stare up at the stars and imagine and kind of immerse myself in this world and be a part of it. And there was a cool movie that I saw a while back. It was called 1913. And this movie was like shot in a crazy way where it was all like one continuous shot and it just kind of followed these two characters. And to me, like I'd never seen a movie like it before because it didn't you didn't feel like you were watching it from the theater or from the couch. You felt like you were in the movie and you kind of the way I described it was you felt like you were a ghost. Like and you were just this ghost that was like floating above the characters and it was a cool way that it was like shot and produced in that way. And I kind of feel that like with a good audiobook, I can kind of immerse myself in the story and feel like I'm following it and being a part of it, which I think is very cool.
Well, that's always my goal. Because yeah, it's fiction. Obviously, it's
Mhm.
all made up. It's fiction. That doesn't mean that it can't be realistic to the point to where the person reading, it's almost like they're experiencing just a parallel world because that's how realistic it is. And the mistake that everybody makes these days, and it's such a rookie mistake, is that their characters are all fake.
Yeah.
All you need, and it's not hard. You just need intelligent characters that talk like real people, think like real people. They act like real people, and then that drives the plot. I've never written I've never written a single book that came out the way I wanted it to. It when I start writing, things just go differently. The
Yeah.
characters make decisions, and then well, that happens. And then everything just grows organically. Like the main characters in Eternal Nights are exactly how you would imagine people that are over 900 years old are. They're not really nice people. I mean,
Yeah.
they they're narcissistic. They because they've been alive for so long, they've studied everything. They think that they know better, but there's still a little bit of romance. And then when the science fiction series takes off, they're not 900 years old anymore. They're 2,200 years old. They're completely different people. The narcissism is through the roof. They're opinionated. And these are the good guys.
Yeah.
I mean, they're still willing to try and do what they agreed to do, but it's going to be on their terms. And the human race can just take it or go get bent.
Yeah.
Like they're very not nice people, but
So
they're the heroes.
yeah. And it's always I like a good villain, a lot of the times. And and like you said, these aren't the villains of the story, but a lot of times like I'll read books and I have like I'm kind of like I'm a libertarian. I'm a little bit opinionated, and I a lot of times like people will write characters that they think are good, and I kind of look at them to go, oh, like this person's a sicko. Like, what do you you know what
Yeah,
I mean? That's kind of interesting to me. Like this book that I'm reading right now, like the main character of the book is like the good guy, and he impregnates a 16-year-old girl, and it's like, wait a minute, this guy's sick.
yeah,
There's
not good.
this is not a good guy, you know what I mean? And it's kind of weird. There's been a little bit too much of that in the book, and it kind of makes me wonder about the author. I'm like, "Hey man, like what are you thinking about on the side here? Like why is there so many young girls in this fucking book?" Like it's a little bit creepy and a little bit weird, but like it takes place in the future, and I could see how like debauchery kind of would run wild in thousands of years in the future. Like maybe that's how people just are. Maybe the guy writing's not as weird as I think he is, and he's just giving you a character like this could be how it is in the future. You know what I mean?
Modern day Mississippi.
Yeah, exactly. So how do you picture the future? Like, you don't have to tell me again, like, don't give away anything about the book, but kind of like what does the world look like in the future? What type of technologies are out there? Like, how are people interacting with each other? What's the future look like to you?
Well, the main series is the 34th century, so everything's spread out, interstellar empires. I picked 3 big ones, for the book, then a lot of, like, smaller alien races, and then I don't know how to describe it without spoiling it, but basically, the massive thing that they were waiting for happens,
Okay.
like an intergalactic threat,
Okay.
and when they were younger at the end of Origins, it was like a romantic thing, like a husband and wife, we're going to take on this quest, we're going to do it. But then when Arrival, the first book that takes place in the 34th century, it's just like, yeah, we're idiots. There's only two of us. There's no freaking way we can do this. But we're going to do it anyway. and and yeah, it's and it gets tough when you're writing the antagonists because like I said, realism is important, but it comes from both sides. And I do perspectives for everybody, and I go extreme, like the good side and the bad side, they're both extreme. And I have to write antagonists that are doing horrible things, brutal things, and I have to write them in such a way that it's okay. Because it's easy to say, like, oh, he's crazy. That's why he's a bad guy. No, they're not crazy. They're intelligent individuals that are making these choices because it makes sense under these circumstances.
Yeah.
And it goes into, I go into like the psychological realm a lot with mental and behavioral health issues because you see too often. So your good guys save the world and they do it with a smile on their face, but that's not real. Nobody's immune to stress. The more they do, the more stressed out they get, and the more it bogs them down. And sometimes the good guys, they have a psychotic break,
Yeah.
and they explore that in a very detailed way that freaks out a lot of people, but it's realistic.
Yeah. So like in this book that I'm writing, it involves like a breakaway civilization that kind of breaks away thousands of years ago, and it's kind of like an explanation for Atlantis and this civilization. They have a technology. I'm not going to give it away, but like they have like a technology that allows them to live essentially forever. And the main villain of the book, like I have to justify his actions throughout so people can go like, yeah, this guy's clearly a villain. But at the same time, like I see why he did what he did. And it's not like a justification really, but more of an explanation and like why you could see that if this guy was alive for thousands and thousands of years, like why he would be pushed to these limits essentially, right? And he kind of starts out as a good guy, as kind of the hero of the ancient world, but by the end, 12,000 years later, he's kind of been pushed to his limits, and he does some really awful things and ends up being one of the worst, people that's ever existed. And you kind of have to like you have to make him to where like people don't completely hate him and go like, "Oh, like if I was put in this situation, like how would I react? Like what would I do if I was, thrust into this position?" And like I think it's an interesting, exercise of creativity to be able to make like a villain that is relatable in a lot of ways.
Relatable, yeah. I mean, you can I mean, you don't necessarily want it to be completely relatable because then the
Yeah.
only people who relate to it would also be villains, but you do want there to be an element of that. I know in Wolves and Ravens, that's fantasy. The primary antagonist for the first 2 books is just a massive demon, but there's so much from his perspective, and I mean, he's a demon. I mean, the stuff that happens is just horrific. Those books go into everything up to and including rape, crucifixion,
Yeah.
suicide, stuff like that. But in some ways, you kind of see things from his perspective, especially like at the very end and stuff like that. Those were not easy scenes to write because you come away from writing stuff like that almost feeling like a little dirty
Yeah.
because you had to do it in a way that made sense and um, um, it's being worshipped, but they're horrible things.
Yeah. You kinda go
But
away and go, "Man, I'm fucked up. Like, what
yeah,
happened? What is wrong with my mind?"
yeah. I mean, I'm a little crazy. I know if you look today at all the artists that we celebrate as being like the best in their fields, they were all nuts.
Yeah, Quentin Tarantino. Guy's
They
freaking out there, you know?
go back a couple 100 years, they're all nuts. They're
Yeah.
people we see or hear things just differently from what other people, and then you're able to put it down on a blank canvas, a hunk of marble, a blank page, in a way that other people can experience it and at least get some enjoyment out of it.
Yeah. So, one of the things that I didn't expect when I started writing is that, like, you kind of live with 1 foot in the real world and 1 foot in the world that you're creating, you know? And so, like, I'll be, like I said, I'll be out in my hot tub listening to an audiobook, but a lot of times I'm not listening to it from my perspective, but I'm listening to it from the perspective of the main character in the book that I'm writing because I like to use these things for ideas and I don't rip people off on ideas, but like, you know, science fiction, everybody kind of uses the same ideas, and
There's only so many
there's
ways you can
only
go.
so many ways you can do something, exactly. So, you kind of, like, go, "Huh, like, that's an aspect of my book, like, how would that play out in the world that I'm creating?" Have you kind of noticed that too? Like, I've even had, like, dreams where I'm kind of in the book, which is very strange.
Well, yeah, my problem is that it's to the extreme. It's like both feet are
Mhm.
in the fake world with these characters, and I have to have other people remind me of like the real world and things like that. Like I said, like I have my own mental and behavioral health journey that I'm on, and on the one hand, it's great for creativity because I'm friggin' nuts, but on the other hand, it can be bad for the real world. Like I've lived with these characters for so long, and people will tell me like they'll read my book and they'll be like, "Wow, this is so cinematic. This could be a movie." It's like, well, because the movie came first.
Yeah.
Because I'm writing down what I see in my head, and it's just sometimes it gets really bad. Like I can't do anything but write or just pace around with like these thoughts and everything, and then it doesn't seem to matter how much of it I get down on paper. There's more there's always more up there. Like I've got like, I don't know, like maybe 2 or 3 dozen books in my head that I haven't written yet, in addition to the 8 that are either in print or waiting in line.
Yeah, see, I'm totally different. Like I'm worried about what I'm gonna do after this one because I don't have any other ideas at this point. Like I've been so into this one for so long that like I've kind of kept myself from thinking about other things because I can kind of get off the rails with it. So I've kind of just been focused on this one and I don't know, like, I don't even know if I'll write another one after this. It takes so long for me to write with, like, just one finger and all this crap. So, like, I don't know if I'll end up doing another one, and which is kind of a bummer because, like, I've heard from other writers that I've had on the show that you kinda have to write, like, 3 books before you get any traction on the originals, and, I don't know if I've got that in me, to be honest.
is a difference. I mean, there is a big difference because getting out and getting noted, the skill set to be a great writer is completely different from the skill set to be a successful writer.
Yeah.
They're two completely different things. And I'm not somebody who wrote a book and then I'm going to spend the rest of my life marketing that book. I can't stop writing.
Yeah.
Like I put almost no effort into marketing and distribution because I can't stop writing and I keep going from like book to book to book. So eventually I had to hire other people to do that crap for me because it wasn't
Yeah.
getting done. And it's I mean it can be tough sometimes. Like my books are very emotionally charged because my goal isn't for somebody to like the story. I want them emotionally invested in what's happening. Like I can't even read my own work without having emotional. I'll read the same manuscript I've read 100 times, and I'll be breaking out in tears in the same spots. Like I'm the one that wrote it. I know what's
Yeah.
happening,
Yeah.
but it doesn't stop. Like I want the person to enjoy things. I want them to hate the parts of the book that they don't agree with because nobody completely agrees with the real world. So if my books are going to be realistic, there needs to be aspects of them that a person doesn't like.
Yeah.
That adds to the realism.
Yeah.
And then I want them emotionally charged for every step of the way to where they almost feel drained when they finally finish the book.
Yeah. And promoting a nonfiction book is so difficult because you have to walk this line of like selling the story without giving the story away. So there's only really like so much you can talk about in the
Yeah.
book without like in a fiction book, like it's pretty easy. You can kind of see like these are the ideas and lay everything out. And the book goes into more depth in it. So people are still gonna want to read it if they're invested in it. But like as like a nonfiction writer, you kind of have to sell yourself in a way because you need like and that's kind of my goal with these interviews with authors is to like get the audience intrigued enough with you that they want to go out and buy the book because that's like all you can really do because like especially for me somebody who's really into books like I don't want to know the end. I've at this point like even when I go on to Audible like years ago I stopped watching previews for movies. It was like all right, if Ridley Scott's putting out another Alien movie, I'm going to watch it. I don't need to watch the preview and see the scenes in advance. Like I just want to like see it for the first time. And I kind of do the same thing with like books now is like if one of the authors that I'm into is putting out a new book, I'm just going to read it. I'm not going to go through the description about it and see like, oh, there's going to be, first contact within this book. Like I don't need to know. Like I want to just experience it all for the first time.
Well, one of the biggest problems with media for all like the last 10, 15 years is that you already know how it's going to end.
Yeah.
Like, like a preview should not be the entire movie. You should not watch a 2-minute preview and already know what's going to happen. But you do
Mhm.
because there's like no thought in it. Like I've read so many books that were over by page 5, but I still have to get through another 300 pages. And I think one of the biggest compliments I've ever gotten is not including people who spoil it for themselves. That's not my fault. But nobody who reads my books has any can figure it out until the end.
Yeah.
And that to me, that's a big compliment. And that's and again, that's what happens when you have real characters, because you don't know really what they're going to do because they're going to do what real people do.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, you can go back like so many, especially with movies and stuff. The only way for the movie to happen at some point, the main characters just go stupid for 5 minutes. They have to because they have to make bad decisions for the plot to happen. But that's not how plots work. The characters are supposed to be the ones driving the plot. I
Yeah.
mean, that's like writing 101, but nobody does that anymore.
Yeah. I watched the last Avatar movie, which was just such a letdown. Like I kind of liked the first one. It came out when I was younger and I was into the CGI and I thought it was pretty cool and everything like that. But then I watched the second one and this is years after I kind of like stopped watching movies because they suck
Yeah,
and, got into books because they're so much better and like learned a little bit more about writing and like in the second movie, I don't know if you saw it, but it's not really worth watching. It's just a
yeah,
repeat of the first movie. And dude, like the change event for the characters came in the last scene of a 3-hour movie. And it's like, what are you doing? You know, like my favorite books have mystery to them. There's a mystery like with your characters, like how what is my origin story, right? And like I like it when you're learning things throughout the book. You're learning a little bit here and a little bit there, and you're not kind of just waiting for the entire, like right now, these books that I'm reading, I'm on the second one of a series, and I'm kind of invested in it, so I'm gonna finish it. But they're like 40-hour audiobooks. And like you're not really learning anything throughout them. Like there's throughout the entire 40 hours, there's maybe 10-20 minutes of like the mystery being solved. Like everything else is just multiple storylines that I still don't know how they're all coming together. It's too many characters in a lot of ways. So like when you have too many characters, you're not so invested in them, right? Like you kind of have to limit your reach so you can be invested in the characters where like in these books I'm like, wait a minute, who are these people again? Like the guy in the beginning, he like did like a whole chapter, like a 10-minute chapter, like listing all the peoples and all their names and everything like that. And it's just like too much. Narrow this thing down. You could do it. Like I like a long book. Like for me, like I'm listening to them. I want to get my money's worth out of them. These things are expensive. So I like a long book. But at the same time, like give me something throughout it. Like keep me invested and not just like, okay, well, what's going to happen tonight and how is this going to tie in and type of thing. Like I want to stay invested, you know. I was a big fan of like Stargate when I was younger. And
I
I love
love that.
Stargate, you know. And Stargate was great because it was episodic, but also every couple of episodes they were kind of solving the mystery. You were kind of getting like back into the long plot of it, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it, you know?
I really did like that show.
Yeah, it was
Um,
great.
I know my, I try my plot lines are pretty complicated. Again, like I'm gearing them for an more mature audience. That doesn't mean that younger people won't like it too. It's just that without a certain amount of life experience, like because in a lot of young adult novels, there's always the love triangle.
Mhm.
That's like a thing. It's a gimmick. You have to do it. Now, I think that's stupid.
Yeah,
Like my main characters are either married or long term, and it's like the older a person is, the more they can appreciate like that level of
yeah,
romance. I know a while ago, this was given to me as a bad review, but I took it positively. A so-called professional told me that my books were too cerebral for their genres. And I'm like, are you calling the audience stupid?
yeah,
I mean, I don't like I have a better view of people can understand things. I mean, you're telling me that people are you're basically telling me that people are too stupid to understand the books. That's not a nice thing to say. Like I completely disagree with that. I think the audience is being underappreciated. Like we keep feeding the same formulaic crap
yeah,
and it fails every single time, but they keep doing it.
yeah.
The last time I actually paid to see a movie was when The Force Awakens was out in theaters.
Ugh,
I fell asleep halfway through. That
yeah,
was the last time I went to a movie
yeah.
theater. That was a long time ago.
Yeah, I won't go to the movie theaters anymore either. Like the last time I went and saw a movie, it was that 1913 movie that I was talking about. And like I went to see it because I heard it was this beautiful noir, style film, which it was. Like it was beautifully shot, like everything was really cool about it. It was very cinematic. But like the movie theater was freezing. The seats were uncomfortable. And like if you're looking at the screen, there's like an exit spot where your emergency exit is, and they left the light on the entire time. So like I was like, dude, this is like if I watched a movie in my house and turned off all of the lights and then left the laundry room light on. It's like, why would I do that? And at this point, like our TVs are really good and I have a good sound system. So like I'm not wasting my money. One of the things that I said, like after I saw that Avatar 2 movie, I was like, we have seen peak CGI for the near future. Like when I was a kid, the line was always that like, oh, technology's getting better, things are getting cheaper, and CGI is just going to keep getting better and better and better. But like that's not the case. These movies are getting more expensive to make.
Yep.
The technology's not really getting all that much better at this point, and, like, people aren't going to the movie theaters anymore. So, it's gonna be pretty hard to, make a $2 billion movie or something like that in the near future if you're not gonna be able to sell the damn thing.
Yeah, and if all you can say, I mean, some of these movies are gorgeous, but if all you can say is that it looks gorgeous, that's a failure. I mean, it should that's like the minimum requirement that it should look gorgeous because of the technology and stuff that we have now. But that if that's all you can say, it's like too many the characters pander to the audience, and that's fake. Because and this sounds contradictory, but when I write, I don't care about the audience because the audience isn't there. The characters do not know that you're listening. So I've had people comment some of my dialogue is insensitive. Like, well, of course it is. That's a private conversation.
Yeah.
When you talk to your spouse, are you being politically correct? I mean, probably not. You've been with this person for decades. Why
Yeah.
would you, or in this case, centuries?
Yeah.
They don't know you're listening. So if they were speaking to your sensibilities, that would be fake. And that's and the same people, and it's funny, the same people that comment on the insensitive dialogue also tell me how much they love the book. It's they don't even realize that that thing that they don't like is adding to the realism, which increase their enjoyment. It's hilarious
Yeah.
because you don't get that in modern media anymore.
Yeah. And one of the things that I wanted to do was like make my characters as real as possible. And like real people have problems, you know? Like I was a drug addict for a long time when I was younger. And like there's characters in my book that struggle with drugs and alcohol. And like that's one of those things where people are like, "Oh, that's bad," but like I would bet money that somebody even in your family close to you that's had those struggles before.
Exactly.
And,
Yeah.
like, I'm dealing with characters that have been alive for hundreds to thousands of years, and how would you cope with that if you're not happy? You know what I mean? Like, if you're not a happy person and you're stuck, like, the book also explores, like, slavery in a lot of ways, like a technological civilization uses the non-technological civilizations as slaves, essentially. So, if you're alive for hundreds of years as a slave, like, how are you gonna cope with that? Are you just gonna grind it out and be happy, not being happy? Or are like you gonna have to cope in some way or another? So like drugs and alcohol are a part of the story. And I think that could probably turn a lot of people off because they want an idyllic person to be the hero of the story. But like even heroes have problems. They have struggles. And like part of the book is not like glorifying these problems, not glorifying drug use or alcoholism. It's like, how do you cope with it? How do you overcome it and still succeed and still do the right thing?
And I think that's what separates a lot the younger audience. Like maybe they read something like that and they like it, they don't like it, whatever. But if you have somebody with more life experience, like you say, like it's kind of relatable to
Mhm.
them. I know Origins, the first book, Redemption for Eternal Nights, it's a lot of world building. There's a huge cast of characters. Origins is just as long and it centers around a total of 5 people, and that includes the bad guys. And it is just a meat grinder. Like in the beginning of the book, the main characters, the husband and wife, everything's fine, they're lovey-dovey. And then as things progress, there's small changes as they keep getting beaten down. Like they're not talking to each other anymore, they're yelling at each other. The language gets worse
Yeah.
because they're stressed out. The female takes the brunt of it, and she ends up having a psychotic break. And well, I mean, I don't want to.
Yeah,
And
yeah. I
the
get it.
whole,
I get it. Like, I'm
whole
dealing with the same type of stuff, you know? How
the
would you
whole
cope?
final third of the book is just a psychological nightmare that actually, when I wrote it, I didn't think I would be allowed to print it. I didn't know what the rules were for books. I gave it to the publisher, expecting the publisher to say, "You went too far, dude. We can't print this." But apparently, with books, as long as there's no imagery, you can say whatever you want and get away with it.
Yeah.
I didn't know any better back then. I'm thinking like the kind of rating system you would have for like TV shows and
Yeah.
movies and stuff. And I'm like, "There's no way they're gonna let me print this." But they loved it.
Yeah.
And I was like, "Hey, you guys are sick and twisted too, I guess."
Yeah, yeah. And, like, for me, I have a pretty dirty mouth. Like, I try and keep it pretty as clean as possible while I'm on podcasts with people that I don't know. So, like, when I'm talking with my co-host, we get pretty dirty, you know? But when I'm talking to somebody like you, I try and keep my language down to a minimum. But, like, there's circumstances where, like, a good fuck is a very descriptive word. And, like, if it's in the
All just reused, yeah.
yeah, as long as it's not overused, like, you have to use it in the right place at the right time. Like, I was watching, somebody do, like a music review on YouTube a while back, and it's an interesting channel. She's like an opera singer, and she does reviews on metal music. And at one point, like, I think it was a Stain song, and he was like, "I'm so fucked up," in one of the songs, essentially, and she was like, I don't really use this type of language in my personal life, but I'm not against it in music because sometimes, like, at the right time, at the right place, like, that's just the only word that you can really use, and it really carries a lot of emotion, it carries a lot of significance, and it shows you that, like, this is serious. This is, like, a serious, you know, time to use this word because nothing else really fits, you know? And, like, yeah, I've dealt with that myself. Like, how real do you want these conversations to be between people, you know? One of the things that I did for this book is, I've had a crazy life. I was a motocross racer. I got into drugs. I lost my hand, and people would close to me. It's like, you should write a book about your life. And I thought about that and I kind of outlined it. And it was kind of going to be like an anthology of different stories that I have dealt with throughout my life, and not really like a long narrative, but more like just kind of an anthology of just different stories throughout my life. And at one point I decided, like, I wouldn't read this. Like, somebody would, but, like, this isn't the type of book that I would wanna read. Like, I don't really care to read autobiographies of people. I think that's kinda boring, and I'm not
Yeah.
really into it. So I decided, like, well, what if I turn this into a book that I would read? And I like science fiction. Like, let's make this into a science fiction book. So the main character of my book is essentially me up to a point where the change point in the book happens, and there's this, massive apocalyptic situation where there's a worldwide EMP essentially, and all the power gets knocked out. So I look at this character and go, okay, how would I hope that I would react in this situation? So it's me here, and then after that, like, it's what would I hope that I would do? So, like, do you find yourself in a lot of these characters?
It definitely like bits and pieces. One of the things that that occur to me is people reading my books might assume that I agree. Like the characters are my mouthpieces. A lot of people do that, and that's why the media is garbage because the only people that like it are the people who wrote it.
Mhm.
But and a lot of my characters are extremely opinionated, but I don't those aren't my opinions. That's just what the character's saying. Like, don't get mad at me. And and with the when you're dealing with characters that are that old, and sometimes, the reader always knows more because the reader's reading everything. The
Mhm.
characters just have their own perspective, and
Mhm.
I blend character perspective and narration. Like these characters, as I said, they're narcissistic, opinionated know-it-alls that even as they are dressing down somebody else, the audience knows they're wrong. They're the ones that are wrong, but they're not my opinions. And a little bit of myself I see in the different characters, but only to the realism. Like when it gets psychological, like I can write behavioral mental health concerns. I can write them in realistic detail because I know what it is.
Yeah.
And I've had people, especially people who have read Origins, I've had people contact me on the side, like they related to that character who broke because they had their own break in different variables. They weren't fighting for the world,
Yeah.
but they saw themselves in that, and then it made them feel better when in the end things kind of worked out. Like I mean, It's just kind of the stuff I hear, the people who read the stuff.
Do you have a harder time writing women than men?
No. Um, I I was concerned in the beginning. Again, back to origins. The character that took the brunt of it was the female character, and because of what was happening, I had to write the worst, darkest things I could think of, but from a female's perspective.
Yeah.
And I didn't have any female proofreaders
Yeah.
at the time. So I'm kind of like guessing. But thankfully, the editor happened to be a woman and loved it. So from that point on, I'm pretty good. I actually think I write female characters better.
Oh, interesting. Yeah,
I
I
think
I kind of dealt with the same thing. I was like, "Man, how am I?" Because like one of the protagonists in the story is a female, and it's like, "How am I gonna write this?" Like, I've never been great with women in my life. Like, I've always picked the wrong ones. I'm divorced, and like my ex-wife is kind of a fucking disaster. And I kind of had the same thought. I was like, "How am I gonna write this character?" And it's not been as hard as I've thought. I've always wondered about some of the writers that I enjoy a lot, they've written books with, a female protagonist as, like, the main character, and it's like, "Man, that's gotta be kinda difficult, like, putting yourself in a female's shoes, like, all the time," but I wonder if, like, it makes you understand women in a different way the more you write them, you know what I mean? I kinda feel like it does in a little bit of a way.
and on average, if you're looking for an emotional reaction, it's just the way it is. The average person will be more emotionally tethered to a female protagonist versus a male protagonist. It's just the way it is. Like people, like I said, people get more emotionally attached if it's a woman. Now, I always have multiple protagonists. So, like in Eternal Nights, they're a married couple. In Wolves and Ravens, there's the female queen and the male protector. So there's always multiple protagonists, but I think if you look at all of my books, it's the female protagonist that kind of drives the plot a little bit more than the male one. And because I know that people will be more emotionally attached to that. So unfortunately, that means you're front and center for all the horrible things that are going to happen.
Yeah. I'm guessing that you're writing from, like, a third person perspective, like a third person narrative?
Well, that's where it blends. I mean, there's always third person narration, but then there's a lot of character perspective too. And I kind of like bounce back and forth between the two. And there's another so-called professional gave me a negative review because they said that my descriptive ability was inconsistent, and they took two selections from the book, and because the first thing was extremely descriptive, because it was the narrator talking. The second thing they used as an example had almost no description because it was the character's perspective. My characters don't magically know
Yeah.
things, just the narrator does. So in that particular scene, the character had no idea what the hell they were looking at. So it's just like, wow, these are a bunch of fancy looking machines. Well, that's because he didn't know any better.
Yeah.
So you got these professionals that don't know the difference between character perspective and third person narration. I'm bitter about that.
Yeah, I can tell. It's just fine, it probably adds fuel to the fire, right? You know?
Professionals seem to hate my writing, but the audience loves my writing. I take that as a positive
Yeah.
because if you look, and I did the math, I figured this out. If you look at how shitty things have been for the last 15, 20 years, well, now think about that. The average person is 21, 22 when they graduate college. Now add 15 to 20 years, you're dealing with 37 to 42. So any professional in the industry younger than 40 doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to creativity because there hasn't been it.
Yeah.
So you have to deal with either really the only way, unless the person loves reruns or old movies, they've never experienced creativity because they simply aren't old enough. And these are the professionals we're dealing with.
Yeah, and, like, there's been a ton of movies and shows in the past, decade or so where the critics have loved it and the audience has absolutely hated it, you know? And I think there's a feedback loop in that where, like, as long as the critics like it, we're gonna get good publicity and we're gonna get, a better shot at money financing for the next film, and, like, a lot of these people, like, gosh, it's the same stuff over and over and over again. Like you said, there's no creativity in it whatsoever. It's like, why do we need another remake of the same freaking movie over and over again? Like, give us something different. There's so many good books out there. Buy some new IP and create something out of this new IP that's interesting. And like, you can go on Audible and there's tons of books that got great reviews from the audience and the critics. Like, turn one of those into a movie instead of making a new version of the same. Like, I saw that there's a new version of The Running Man coming out. It's like, why? Just make something new. You know what I mean?
You could probably make 6 or 7 new movies for the same budget that they're doing these things. I take it well, when they say critics, I don't know, I'm thinking shills
Yeah.
because it's all crap, and then you see the commercials, and the commercials talk about, like, number 1 movie in the world, 5 stars, everything, but then you Google it, and the movie bombed.
Yeah.
It's like we're just making shit up at this point,
Yeah.
and they're losing millions and millions and millions of dollars, and then they keep making the same mistake. I did for my Wolves and Ravens trilogy, I did 3 rounds of market research, and that's always a little sketchy because you're only giving somebody a little tidbit, and when it's original, that can make it confusing. And then I'm thinking it's only for a mature audience, so I'm thinking this is going to be horrible.
Yeah.
I 90 to 92% average across 10 categories, all 3 rounds. Like, the people who did my market research were like, "This we consider high 60s to be a success." And I'm scoring in the 90s.
Yeah.
And we're talking to professionals with this information, and it's like we're beating our heads against the wall because it's like you have the actual paperwork that shows that over 90% of the population wants you to make this, but no, we're going to make Batman again for the 10th time,
Yeah.
even though it failed every other
I
time.
know. I can't stand superhero movies.
No,
They
I don't get it.
drive me nuts. One of my favorite movies in the past 20 years, like sci-fi movies, was District 9. Like, I thought District 9 was great. It was a low budget movie. It had actors in it that you've never heard of before, and it was just really, really good.
Yeah.
You don't need to have this expensive IP and these actors that everybody's familiar with. Like, why? Like, I don't need to see Matt Damon in another of the same freaking movies that he's made over and over again, right? Like, I wanna see something different. I wanna see something unique? Andy Weir wrote a book recently, like, he's really good, and he wrote a book called Project Hail Mary that's, coming to the big screen in a couple years, and, like, I'm interested to see how it goes because I really liked the book. I thought it was really good, and I thought The Martian was a decent movie too, but, like, did it need
Oh,
Matt
I
Damon
love
in it?
that.
Yeah, it was great? But, so we'll see? Like, I'm interested to see, like, how it goes, but, man, there's so many books that I read where I would just love to like I said earlier, Alicia Reynolds' Revelation Space is one of the just an incredible book. Like, make that into a movie? Um,
Well,
Dune.
you see
Dune
all
was
these
great. Like, Dune is great. Like, I really liked
a
the first
lot.
I liked the first and the second one, like, and that's kind of an anomaly, right? Like, for a remake, like, and I liked the original Dune movie too. I thought it was good. It was kinda campy and weird and, like, it worked? And it's like one of the only ones that I've seen, a remake recently where I'm like, "Okay, that was worth making." The guy did a really good job making it, and, like, the acting was good, the cinematography was really good. Like, there was a scene in the first one where they had this, like, pyramid where they're going to pick up, like, an army, and it's got these people that are hanging upside down, bleeding out, and they're doing all the throat chanting and stuff. It's like, "Oh, yeah, that's Dune. That's the Dune that I read." So, like, if you're gonna turn, like, an expensive, like, popular piece of IP into a movie, do it right like Dune did?
Well, you see, like, a lot of these IPs and stuff that are getting revisited is because copyrights expire.
Yeah.
Copyright's not permanent, and then you have a lot of the original creators are dead. So you're basically either the copyright's expired, so it's everybody's game, or they're buying rights from a family member that doesn't give a shit.
Yeah.
So all of the sudden, out of nowhere, you're getting all these new things like Alien and stuff like that. And they just there was a show Talamasca. It just came out recently on like AMC or something from Anne Rice's books, Talamasca, the Secret Society. and they were digging deep to find that, and they made a whole series out of it. Well, Anne Rice died a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
so now we're digging through that crap trying to find stuff we haven't already told, and you're basically smearing her name, and she was one of the best. I didn't I didn't like her take on a lot of things, but I can respect her skill at writing. And like I said, that's how I fell in love with vampires reading Anne Rice's books when I was a kid.
Yeah, you gotta wonder how they would react to their movies, like, you gotta wonder, like, if Dan Herbert would have liked these new Dune movies, you know? The guy who's making Dune, when he's done with Dune, he's gonna make Rendezvous with Rama, which is a famous Arthur C. Clarke book, and you gotta wonder, like, how would these people react to their IP being used after they're gone? How would it how does it translate from their vision to the big screen? And yeah,
Well,
it's one of those
best
shaky things.
like some of the best movies compared to book were probably like the original Lord of the Rings. They did a really good job with those movies,
Yeah,
and they were great. And then they have destroyed that IP since.
they have,
Coming
absolutely.
out
Just
this
destroyed it. I watched the newest one, the TV show, and god, it was
what
awful.
was it?
It was
The
just
oh shit,
awful.
what was that Netflix series?
Yeah, it's that one. I don't
And the budget was insane. The budget was something like each episode was almost the budget of a freaking movie.
yeah.
Tanked.
You know, there's a great series of books, written by a Chinese author called The Three Body Problem. They did a American version of the show on Netflix, and it was pretty good. Like, they did a good job, but it was 6 episodes. China made a of their own version of the series, and it was like 22 episodes in the first season, and it was better. They made 22 episode season for cheaper than the 6 episode next Netflix season. The CGI was just as good. They covered the book way better because it's a really long book. It's like a, 500-page book or something. Like, there's a lot going on. It's hard to boil 500 pages down. And the American version, they did like gender swaps and race swaps on all the
Oh,
characters and all
yeah.
that shit
This
that people hate.
that's all the rage now, yeah.
Yeah, they did all that crap that people hate, but, like, I enjoyed the Chinese version of the show better than the American version, and, like, the Chinese version was, like, dubbed over, but it was still good, and it's like, how how can you not look at what you're doing and going like, "We need to change. We need to figure out how we can make these things for cheaper and, like, to actually bring the true vision of the IP into the big screen," and, like I said, like, I enjoyed the American version of it, it was good, but it was like I said, it was like 6 or 8 episodes, and, this is a 500-page book, and there's, 3 of them, so, like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna do 18 episodes for 1,500 pages worth of books? Like, that's crazy.
And then we have all of these movies, they finally kind of stopped doing it as much with, strong female characters
Yeah.
who are really just, perfect children who are better than it's like that's
Yeah.
not how you write a female character. I know I have in Wolves and Ravens, Chin is the Raven Queen. The book starts when she's 7 and she's a terrible child and she grows up into being like a great queen, but she never gets over like her petulant side and like it her because the reader sees public and private, like her public persona is perfect all the time, what everybody needs to see, but then on the private side she's breaking down constantly because she's so young and she can't handle it and she doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
But then the male character, and god forbid you have a male character support a female character because we're not supposed to support them, they're
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
He's comforting her and basically just pushing her right back into that same world she hates. That's a strong female character.
Yeah.
Because you have an actual arc and growth.
Meanwhile, there's probably a dozen action movies on Netflix starring, female characters that nobody's watching and nobody wants to watch, and they just keep making them.
Yeah, they're like 12-year-old females that are perfect. They're geniuses. They can beat the crap out of
Yeah.
groups of men 3 times
Like,
their size.
I'm so like, the new Jurassic Park, I watched the new Jurassic Park, and, like, they bring in a mercenary to kind of, like, keep everybody safe from the dinosaurs, and it's Scarlett Johansson. It's like, what the fuck? Make Scarlett Johansson the scientist and put like a big 200-pound man as your protection. Like, I'm so sick of seeing like 90-pound women beat the shit out of 250-pound men. It's just so
Yeah.
annoying. It's like, come on.
Unless they earn it, like
Yeah.
if you show me some kind of an arc where they got this secret training or something like that, but they're just
Yeah.
magically better.
Yeah. Well, like in The Expanse, I was talking to my buddy about this the other day. Like, The Expanse is one of it's a great series of books. The show was really good. And like their badass military character in that show is a woman, but she does it. She's big. She looks big. And like also they have power armor. So like that's one of the things where like, yeah, you can have a female soldier if they've got power armor. It makes it a whole lot easier for them to beat the shit out of somebody when they've got this big set of armor on them that makes them as strong, stronger than anybody. And like, if you've got a set of power armor, doesn't matter how big or strong you are, you're going to be, the same regardless, essentially. So I thought that was, an interesting use of a character arc in that show. It was a good show. I did look up while you were talking earlier in the show. The book that I was talking about with the vampire is called Blind Sight by Peter Watts. You should give that one a go. You would like it, just because you're
Okay.
into vampires. Blind Sight, Blindsight. It's a really good book, really interesting. Like there's aliens, and the aliens are truly terrifying. Like very rarely do I read a book that has aliens in it that are like actually alien. A lot of times they're, pretty much like people, just looking different. They kind of think in the same type of way as people, where like this is like a truly terrifying group of aliens. And I think you'd like it.
Cool, cool.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Tell people where they can buy your book. Do you have audiobook or you just go and print for now?
For now, it's just print. Uh, well, I mean, my website's pretty simple. It's richardspeagle.com. I just stuck with my name. I'm Richard
Perfect.
Spiegel Books on Instagram.
Is it better to buy it from your website or for Amazon, or doesn't matter?
It's Thank
Same thing.
the links on the website go to Amazon, but the website has a lot of content, like a lot of videos, a lot of trailers and stuff like that.
Perfect. Well,
It
I'll send you my email after we get off here, and anytime you ever want to come back on and promote when you got a new book out, just shoot me an email and we'll have you back. Pleasure talking to you. Pleasure meeting with you, and I hope your books sell great. I always want to see you guys sell books.
All right, well, hey, thanks a lot. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah,
You know,
absolutely. I always enjoy talking with authors. It's fun to kind of dig into how these things come about. Like it's I read a series of books recently, and we'll get out of here after this. But like, there's theories that like ideas don't really come from us, that they exist in the ether somehow. And like you said earlier, like you have a plan for the book, and then somehow it just kind of takes on a life of its own. And Philip K. Dick's, he wrote the Man in the High Castle, and he thought that like that world actually existed at one point, and like the simulation kind of changed, and he could remember part of the simulation, right? And so I read this series of books where the guy was writing about a multiverse, and he thought at one point like, wow, if we truly live in an infinite multiverse, then like mathematically this story is real somewhere out there. Like it has to be, because it's an infinite universe. And like maybe your stories are real too. And that's why they're so real to us, and how, you live with both feet in the world. Like maybe you are connected to it in some way. I like to think along those lines. I think that's pretty interesting.
well, your real characters are going to organically create their own story, and you can't be afraid to write that story, even if it's not the story you intended to write in the first place.
Yep.
That's how you get real stuff out there.
Yep. All right, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks for listening, everybody. Good night.